Hello and welcome to another episode of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Wally, joined as always by my good mate, Harro. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, Wally. I've been saying fired up the last few weeks. Come back to earth a little bit this week, though.
Didn't we? Look, you can't be up every week. You can have even the best teams of all time, Essendon 2000s, Geelong 07. They lose, and they lost two, but they lose one somewhere in the season. So even the greatest teams of all time, the greatest Warriors team in the NBA still lost 9 games over the 82-game season. So these things happen, Harro. We know that. Let's get straight into it. We're accountable here. Highlights, lowlights. We'll start with the highlights because we still did get some stuff right.
Yeah, I mean, with the best bet, it would have been so easy for me to just put it on Sydney again, like our old trusty favourite. And I talked to the line ladder, Wally. They're undefeated at the line this year, the Swans.
Yeah, and I think the next best is 5-2 or 4-3 or something. So there's a gap.
Yeah, north of 5-2 in the line ladder, and we'll post that today for the followers to check out. But again, it was the Swannies was probably our best result, and also calling out the Charlie Curnow to kick 6 at $10, and some punters found big odds on that as high as $16. So I think that was our main highlight, mate. There were other little ones with some player bets around like the Melbourne game and whatnot, but essentially that was our best result.
Yep, and lowlights.
The lowlights. So obviously we got a lot more wrong this week than we got right, but I always want to be introspective on the best bet, and obviously got that one completely wrong, and I know now where I went wrong. Basically, Essendon fielded a team, I think, with 13 players with 34 or games less experience. And normally I would not back a team with that kind of profile. It just kind of slipped me. When I do all of my assessment, it's normally one of the things I take into account. I think I'd watched the Pies the week before against the Blues, and I couldn't have been less impressed. But also, we already knew this about the Pies. If you're not, they can't probably keep up with the top teams. But if you make mistakes, they're very much good enough still to punish teams that are going to make errors. And a team with such a lack of experience in Essendon were a risk to put in that sort of performance. And so I think that's where that one went wrong, Wally. And so, we just learn from it and we move on.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Like, you got to remember, it doesn't matter. You can't trust the form of inexperienced teams as much as you can as, say, a Sydney. So you can trust Sydney's form going into each week because you go, okay, they're building a body of work. We've seen it years prior as well. They've got a lot of seasoned veteran players. They're playing great footy. Yes, Essendon had a couple of good weeks, but like when you actually look back at that, Harro, as you said, respectively, looking back and you go, yeah, but like how long can they sustain that for? And I think it's a good shout. And the other thing is the Pies are so organised and so structured and have been for years that they are always going to be a team. If you're 5% off, like if Hawthorn go into Thursday night against Collingwood and they're 5% off, Collingwood will beat them. You have to be on against Collingwood no matter who you are. But as you said, if those top teams go in and play to their best footy, the Pies probably aren't quite there anymore. But, mate, I'm going to get stuck straight in now to my selection table. And we're going to start with an in, and it's a Collingwood-themed in, and I love it. Ironically, out this weekend, but Scotty Pendlebury and the game's record, I'm here for all of it. I want to celebrate when he ties the record. I want to celebrate when he breaks it. I was thinking about this, and as much as I love that there's 2 Hawthorn players in that have had over 400, I feel like Pendlebury is a really worthy holder of the record. I love Pendles. I think that he's in that echelon with the likes of Marcus Bontempelli, Jeremy Cameron, that I don't think anyone hates him. He's universally liked, whether you like Collingwood or not. He's not one of these players that anyone really hates. And I just think that there's a niceness to that. I will say this, though. Have you seen this, Harro? The AFL have approved him to wear like a gold 10 on his back in the record-breaking game. which feels like the least Collingwood Scotty Pendlebury thing ever. Like, we're talking about a club that is literally built on no one is bigger than this club and a player that has always just like put the game first. But it'll be a bit of fun. Bit of theatre around that, Harro. So I'm looking forwad to that. And also I'm very happy that he's not breaking it against us.
Can I make a comment, Wally?
Yeah, go for it.
There was an interview with him and he came out with the best 5 players he's taken the field with. Have you seen that?
Okay, do you remember all 5?
I know Joel Selwood was in there, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, but he obviously really rated Selwood. I think Dustin Martin was number 1, and wow. I think that's a great call. I think Lance Franklin number 2. Beg pardon?
Gary Ablett Jr.?
Yeah, I think Lance Franklin number 2, Gary Jr. number 3, Selwood number 4, and I can't remember number 5.
Chris Judd? Can't
remember it. But it was interesting.
Say it was Luke Hodge. We'll say 5 was Luke Hodge if you can't remember. We'll just put him in there. But there you go. Interesting. Dusty, great shout. The aura of Dusty and Buddy just on the field, you would feel it as another player, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Lenny Hayes.
Sorry?
I think it was Lenny Hayes.
Can I tell you a quick little side story about Lenny Hayes? You know when you see players in the flesh and you can't believe their size?
Right.
Lenny Hayes, I saw at Chadstone Shopping Centre one day walking through. I was with my mate. He was a Saints fan. And we were walking through and we had to double take. His chest was about this thick. And if you're listening, I'm holding up like you'd be talking about, I just caught a fish this big. He was huge. And I'm like, oh, imagine getting tackled by that bloke, because he used to lay a shitload of tackles. And he was just, you know those players and you're surprised how big they are when you actually see them?
Gary Ablett Jr. is like that. He's massive.
Isn't Gaz Jr. taller than Gaz Sr.?
I'm not sure, but when I met Gary Jr., I was surprised how big he is. He's so thick.
Yeah, it's the same with Patrick Cripps. You see him, you just forget the size. You're like, is that a key forward or a fucking Brownlow medal midfielder? Like, it's ridiculous. Anyway, I digress, Harro. So I just wanted to shout that out. The other one for me, it's giving me nightmares, but the other in for me is Brisbane Lions are toying with the competition. Harro, they are just going, we're going to win what we need to win. We're 4-3. That's fine. We'll be there. We'll just keep an eye on the ladder as long as we're in the 6. We don't want to have to deal with this wild card round. We'll have our little break and then we'll get in and we're going to fucking wreak havoc on the whole finals and we're going to win 3 in a row. So they are back and they are taking the absolute piss at the moment, because what they did to Adelaide, who are a decent side, was like they were just joking around, kicking goals, singing songs, playing music after goals. Like, it was just carnage. So Brisbane are back. All right. Another tiny little in is Hawthorn, Tasmania. You just don't fuck with them down there, Harro. Just don't. Like, they do not lose footy games there. It's just like, beware. All right, the outs. I've got one. Just the AFL and all their shit. Like Swan coming out and going, umpiring's never been better. The clubs have never been happier with the umpiring. You can't keep rolling this line out year after year. There was an incident, I think it was in the VFL on NEFL, sorry, I'm not sure where Brisbane were playing. Oh, to be the VFL, Brisbane were playing Port Melbourne. James Hurd called this out on footy class. Umpiring's across the board, VFL, AFL. 2 Brisbane players have run into each other and clashed heads against Port Melbourne. The umpires have blown the whistle and given Brisbane a free kick for head-high contact. What would have been even better is if they reported one of the players. That would have been great. But they've knocked heads. So that's where it's starting. And then all the crap, the arc, this lasso shit, the stand rule, which is absolutely garbage. All of it's just a farcical joke. Harro, all of it is just absolute like crap that gets in the way of the greatest game there is. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. And I don't think anyone and the fixturing's great too, by the way. Let's bury a showdown half an hour after a game that is going to be Western Bulldogs Freo now. I don't think that's a great watch. That'll be on Channel 7. So if you're actually a footy fan that wants to watch the showdown, now that Port have turned things around and it's going to be a good game, I think you're going to have to find KO or Foxtel in Melbourne. I don't think you'll be able to watch. So anyway, my point being, get absolutely stuffed across the board there, Harro. So that I've got that off, but we're going to move into some more positive stuff now because, Harro, I have some questions off social media. First one isn't a question; it's just a statement with 2 exclamation marks. Bring back the train. The train has gotten a little harder since the Green Cafe pulled their promo because the Footy Form guide had them on their knees. But we'll do that. And then there was another shout out as well asking, can we talk? Where is it? Like, can we get a ladder going? Like every week, finding one bet. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can do something like that where we actually call it out and we go, this is our best bet for the rounds. And the $1.20 pop would be this line or that line. We'll look at that. All right, let's get stuck into some of the actual questions here. All right. Any tips, resources around mental discipline? I often find I get emotional and don't stick to my plan or staking guides. Welcome to punting, first of all, in my world, because that's what we do. I've got a tip from a mug, Harro. Have 2 pots of money. Have one pot of money, your spreadsheet, you track everything, and have another small pot of money that sits in a betting account you don't really care about. And you go, if I want to have a bet at 2 a.m. on the piss at Turfentine and back some donkey, or if I want to have an MLB multi all up on a Tuesday because there's nothing else on and I want to watch it, do it from that account. That's my tip. And that is you just go, that's a little bit of fun money. I'm not going to miss it. I'm going to have that and smaller stakes and then go, here's my pot over here that I gamble. That's what I do, Harro. Do you have any other tips as someone who is very disciplined?
Well, we have the super cut, which is, I think, pinned to the top of our X page, which has got lots of information and it's time-stamped. So you'll be able to find some segments that we've already done on it. But I think like the important thing is like, emotionally, you don't want to obviously be betting based on emotions, and just because you've won or lost your previous bet shouldn't influence your next bet. And if you are feeling a little bit stressed, and it could be to do with other things outside of the punt, or with how you're on a bad run or something like that, the best thing you can do is just have a breather, and go and touch grass and, get outside and play with the kids or go and watch a movie or have a bit of time out. I think that's the easiest thing to do, just to reset your mind and refresh yourself. The one thing you don't want to be doing is going, geez, I'm down a bit this round. I'm going to try and win it all back in this game for
lost out. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to avoid all those sort of, mental pitfalls and whatnot. And the easiest way is just take yourself out of the action for a day or two, or however long you think you need to get yourself, back on track. And like, I had a bad weekend on the punt on the weekend, and I actually woke up Monday morning feeling really good. So I don't feel like I feel fresh. I feel good. So I don't feel like I'm needing to have a break. It just was one of those weekends, and but I didn't push it too hard either. I knew, come Sunday that things weren't kind of falling our way so far for the weekend, so I didn't push it too hard. And we move on and we get to our review process. Make sure you review, as we did with the Collingwood bet just before. Make sure if you are making mistakes that you learn from them as well and take those lessons forward.
Yeah, it's a great shout, Harro. I mean, you should. If you're feeling like crap and your head's not in the game, punting's the last thing. There's so many other things you can do to take your mind off feeling shit and like getting out and doing that. Punting should be something you're doing when you're actually dialed in. Because the other thing is that it's like whether it's something you do and you track and you're actually making profit out of it, or if it is your pastime, hobby, fun thing. So some people might go-karting. Some people love going to the movies. Some people I don't know, might do floral arranging, Harro. I don't know what people do. But other people might go, do you know what? My Saturday hobby is to put $50 into a betting account and have some bets on the footy. And the difference between my hobby and others is that with floral arranging, I'm assuming you can't get any money back. whereas with punting you can get a bit Harro. So, like, however you do it, it's not like a way to escape. You should only be getting involved and doing it with punting. You should be doing it when you're actually like in a clear headspace, Harro, as you say.
Yeah.
And always review the losses, track your losses, know what you're winning and losing. All right, next one. What process do you go to when looking at games? Sorry, I should have read that. Again, this is the whole thing, is that any questions around how Harro looks at his weekly betting, looks at the matches, all of that. The supercut that is, again, pinned at the top of our page on X, on Twitter, that is where you want to go to. That has everything in terms of the betting 101. All right, Harro, what are your thoughts on Darcy, Wilson and Dersma and their new inside mid-rolls? Did someone say value was the follow-up to that?
Yeah, just back to that previous question, because it has changed a little bit and it's got a lot easier because of Bet Sniper. And, I used to have to do everything kind of manually. But now, like if you sign up to Bet Sniper, everything is really in one place. And it's made things like a lot quicker. And so, yeah, I do encourage people, if they want to study the form and come up with bets, that there's no real place better than to do it than that. And so, I'm giving them a bit of a plug right now. But if you do sign up, make sure you give them the code Footy Form Guide as well, because you'll get 25% off. All right, on your first month. So make sure you do that. But definitely, I start off basically in the match hub in Bet Sniper, and it just gives you a really good overview. Like, I can look at just quickly, I've got the match hub up for Collingwood Hawthorn this week. And the first thing that I see is like, okay, well, Collingwood are number one in the comp for combined disposals. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at disposals as being something to an advantage, being a Collingwood game right here. And you just sort of start finding little things, where if it's a North Melbourne game, I think they're 18th for combined disposals. So already I'm thinking this is going to be a tricky game for disposals, right? But then that might just be a starting point. So I'm starting in the match hub, in the AFL prop tool, with Bet Sniper, and then just working my way through every aspect, every angle I can find, and assessing every player based on their merits, and see where you end up from there.
Very good, Harro. Very good. All right, yeah. So just Darcy Wilson and Dersma, new inside mid rolls. Harro, what are we thinking?
Well, I love the Darcy Wilson one because he's got such explosive speed. He's a real athlete. He does butcher the footy a bit. He's not the best kick, but he's got all the attributes, hasn't he? And so I like it. The Dersma one, I think what happened, I listened to their coach's presser, and he basically said that Dersma just put his hand up on Monday and said, what's happening with Naz? What are we going to do with Naz this week? And he put his hand up to play the role on Naz. And so I don't know whether Dersma's going to continue playing that inside mid role. Might have just been something he put his hand up to do for 1 week, and he might go back to the wing next week. But he's such a good player. I loved his game against St Kilda, although his team got flogged. He showed why he was a number one pick. So I want to see more of it.
All right, very good, Harro. All right, thoughts on Lincoln McCarthy, new role at the Lions, taking on Oppo small forward, had 23 on the weekend, and Fagan suggested he'd be staying there with Answorth and Payne out. Said that on Fireball, apparently.
Yeah, well, just be a little bit careful with Zorko coming back.
Okay.
Like if you're looking to back him in terms of his disposals. Also, I think he had 23 disposals, but he did have 7 turnovers, which is pretty high. So, watch that space. It's not something that I'm not diving into wanting to back him this week based on what he did last week. And we saw that a little bit this week with Tholstrup from the D's, who had 1 week basically.
Tholstrup's a swear word on this podcast. Fucking never again.
So, yeah, we kind of backed him based off 1 week of having moved into that role, and it probably wasn't enough to support him, just based off 1 week. So, maybe you could treat McCarthy a little bit the same, let him build some form over time before you really dive into him.
Yep, fair call too, Harro. All right, quick one. Besides Sidebottom and Pendlebury, by the way, I completely agree with this, who are, in your opinion, great wet weather players, which is something we're going to be getting a lot more. We've had a beautiful week here in Victoria the last week. It's been like 25 degrees every day. bizarre April behaviour in Victoria, but it's been beautiful. We're going to get into wet weather footy. I'll give you a few that I've got, Harro, that'll come as no surprise. Bont is good in any conditions. He could play on the moon. We know that. I think Zach Butters is really good in the wet. I just think that, he doesn't have the biggest frame, but he plays like an absolute bull. I think Jai Newcomb's a good wet weather footballer as well. I've seen a lot of him. I think we're lucky to have a few of those. I don't know if we've got a Bartel running around at the moment, but they're just a couple that I think that are really good in the wet. Is anyone sticks out for you, Harro?
Yeah, I've got two for you. Luke Jackson, he's always really good in the wet, just runs in straight lines, and you probably don't want to get in front of him when he's running straight through. And the other guy I've noticed is Max Holmes, has a great record in wet weather footy as well. So there's a couple off the top of my head.
Geelong, I've always had him because Mitch Duncan was a great wet weather player. Stevie Johnson was a great wet weather player. Selwood was obviously good in the wet. As we said, Bartel, Joel Corey, they had, mate, yeah. They don't want for anything really, Geelong. You could have any list and go, which players suit this list, and they'd have them. Let's be honest. All right. Can we talk about diminishing offerings for unders markets on the bookies? This is doing my head in, Harro. How hard is it? You know me, my opinion has always been you should have, in a perfect world, there'd be two things that exist. For every bet there is an alternate bet. So everything needs to be met on both sides so you can see whether they're taking 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever the VIG is, for lack of a better term. The other thing, I think, that's one thing. The other thing, there should be minimum bet laws on sport like there is racing. So you have to be able to win X amount of dollars on a market. They're my things. So this is frustrating at the moment, Harro.
Yeah, I noticed on the weekend a lot of the value had been sucked out of the player disposal markets where they weren't having to offer both sides. And I noticed Sportsbet, for instance, they were only offering, I think, 4 players from either side under or over on the weekend, where they've offered more than that in the past. And I think also the Tab taking away their +1 made the whole ecosystem less competitive. And I'll just randomly bring up Sportsbet right now and find a player. And I'll give you an example of a ridiculous line. So, sorry, I'm doing this completely on the run because I know I'll be able to find one within about 3 seconds here, so long as my page loads fast enough, which is not right now. Sorry, mate. Here we go. All right, I'm just going to pick 13 plus disposals, right? Finn McGuinness has got 13 disposals once in his last 5 outings. He's $1.17 to get 13 this week. How does that sit with you, Wally?
Yeah, I know. He had 24 last week. That's why.
Yeah, I'm just picking one out randomly.
I know, mate. I know what you're saying.
All right, here's one. Ed Allen. Ed Allen has had 13 disposals once in his last 5, and it was 14. He's coming off 10 last week. He's $1.37 to have 13.
Yeah,
I'll just pick 2 random out. That's just disgusting.
This is why you need both sides, Harro. That's why you need both sides.
Saying. Yeah.
And look, the Green Cafe has obviously they couldn't give a shit about punters. They're obviously, taking that away. So you got Thursday, Friday. I will say this. Friday nights with the doubleheader, as bad as the fixturing is, you get 2 cracks at that, though. So you got 3 games in the next month instead of 2 where you get the +1. So keep that in mind when you're doing your same game multis. Anyway, Eric, to answer your question, we're across it. Where it's frustrating. All right, Harro, let's get stuck into some footy because things kick off this week. Where else would you rather be? Thursday night, MCG. 2 big clubs, Collingwood play Hawthorn, the biggest club in the land, against the most successful of the modern era. Collingwood $3.35, Hawthorn $1.33. The line is 21.5. Also, I will say as a side note, very good to see Will Day's injury window is now inside a month, and I'd like them to extend that for another month to make sure he's fine because we don't need him now. We need him in September, but that gets me excited. Collingwood, $3.35, Harro. great win on Anzac Day. Don't know exactly how to read that. Hawthorn, obviously, good win down in Tassie, but is that more about Gold Coast just underachieving at this point? How do you see the game, mate?
Well, yeah, both sides off a 5-day break here, which does muddy the waters a little bit because you just can't be certain who's going to be closer to their best based off that. So I'm kind of considering they're both off a 5-day break. I'm just going to call that even and move on. I think the team changes will help Hawthorn with, Moore and Sicily just having a nice little 1-week break. They get to come in fresh when everyone else is off a 5-day break. And I do feel like Collingwood, and you would, they've aimed up for the Anzac Day game, just given how much of a massive game that is. And so they're leaving Pendles out this week, and there could be a couple of others, maybe Howe. So I think we're going to see Hawthorn basically close to full strength with the Pies with a couple missing. One bet that stood out to me straight away was the under 180.5. We had a bit of a heartbreaking loss on the over 180 in the Hawks Gold Coast game in the weekend. It fell, obviously just short. There was a lot of punters sort of following along with that one, and we got a few messages in saying, "Oh, bad luck, lads. We were on that one too," and whatnot. And but facts is here, like, this line set at 180.5. I'm rating it at about 165. And look, that's just a long-standing trend in Pies games. And the only real way I see this going over is if it's a bit of a blowout. If so long as this game's reasonably competitive, I think that the under 180.5 is a really good bet. Just on the disposal front, look, the Pies, they're collecting the 4th most disposals in the comp, and they're conceding the 2nd most. And as I said before, they're number 1 in the AFL for combined disposals. They're giving up a lot of marks and a lot of uncontested possessions. I think this will really suit some of the Hawthorn players who we know that the Hawks do like to possess the ball. And so I'll mainly be focusing my disposal bets on your guys who get a lot of marks and uncontested possessions. It's your Amons, Impies, your Sicilies, and there's one other one here, Wally. He's just got a fantastic record against his old club, and that's Jack Ginnivan. And he's actually just playing great footy as well. And he's got a great matchup in terms of the position he plays, whether it's high half forward or wing. The Pies are giving up plenty of disposals to that type of player. And he's actually got 31, 31 and 26 in his last 3 against the Pies. And so I think we can back him to get around that 20 mark, and then potentially back him for 25 or more as well at a bigger price. So I like those angles, Wally. As far as the line goes, I've got a bit of a lean to Hawthorn. I'm not going to get too sucked into the Pies beating up on a Essendon team, with such a lack of experience. We won't see Hawthorn make the same types of mistakes that Essendon made. And for that reason, I got to lean to the Hawks at the line also.
Nice, mate. All right, then we move on from Thursday. Obviously, we've got Friday night. We've got a double header. We start with the Western Bulldogs versus Fremantle before we get into the big one. It's the same. It's exactly the same. Freo's $1.33. Western Bulldogs are $3.35. The line is 21.5 again. So you got exactly the same market, Harro. Different night, different stadium, different teams, obviously. Talk to us.
I do really want to wait for the teams to come out, Wally, before we get busy on this one, because the Dogs could potentially bring back like Libba, English. There's like one or two others as well. So they're also, the Dogs, you got to understand that they've just been through 3 6-day breaks in a row. And now they've had an 8-day break, a bit of a freshen up here, where Freo are going the other way. They're on the second of their 3 6-day breaks in a row with a bit of interstate travel. So I'm a little bit wary that the Dogs could come out a little bit more energised and Freo potentially not, because all your instincts are to want to be with Freo here. But, when I look at it a little bit deeper, we could see a bit more of an energised Doggies side with a few, big players coming back. So it's probably just. I'm probably not going to back the Dogs, but it's probably put me off backing Freo.
Yep. Fair enough.
They did play like a mini final as well at Marvel at the end of last year. One of the best games I think we saw for the season last year. I don't know if you remember it, Wally, and Freo came out.
Very well.
Yeah, 15-point favourite, 15-point winners, but with equal scoring shots. What stood out for me in that one was Voss, Amos, and Tracy combined for 9 goals between them. We just saw Charlie kick 6 on the weekend. We had to fill up with that. We've seen Cameron kick 10 the week before. So I've got the same concerns about the Dogs' sort of key defence as what we had last year.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be looking at, probably, look, they've got 3 up there, don't they? Like, it's probably Tracy's the guy, but don't discount Voss and Amos as well as potential guys who could get a hold of them. And so have a look at their goals. We know already that defenders versus the Dogs is a really good area to want to be. And so you've got like your Luke Ryans down there. He's getting plenty of kick-ins as well. They like to use him as a bit of a distributor and getting those marks across the back line, and they're doing their switches and whatnot. They are a bit of a ball control team too, Freo, and you do want to probably play – when you get a matchup like this, it is those defenders. So you've got Clark down there as well. You've got Warner?
Yes.
Yeah, these types of guys. So no doubt there'll be some good bets to be had around that. Now, the other little thing, O'Meara looks like being out. He's been taking up one of the wing roles. And the Doggies do give a lot of disposals out to wingers. Now, Freo are mixing it up so much through their midfield and wings at the moment. Like, I think they had 8 players outside of their rucks do centre bounces on the weekend. So they are really mixing it up, which does make it difficult to know exactly who to target. And it could be a little part of the reason why, like, Andy Brayshaw isn't finding the consistency that he's had in previous years, just because he's getting thrown around. Like, a lot of these guys are getting thrown around a lot through that midfield. So, but I do think there's a guy like Johnson. He's going to do a bit of inside mid and a bit of wing. He could be well suited. Like, with Young back now and Bolton playing full-time midfield, it is a bit hard to kind of get a read on how they're all going. The Dogs are completely opposite to that. They're sticking their guns in there and letting him go all day. So a guy like Bont, he had 33 against the Freo last time. He's a little bit freshened up here. I'd be happy to support Bont here in a big game like this with a decent matchup, knowing that a tag's likely not coming.
Very good, Harro. All right, the second game on Friday night is, of course, the showdown, and it's shaping as what could be a good one based off what I've seen the last couple of weeks. I actually quite like Port here. $1.52 for the Crows, Port at $2.55. The line is 2 goals. It's 11.5. Power, Harro, can they cause a mini upset here? I mean, it's not a huge gulf in the market. We're talking about a 2-goal swing, but I don't know. Mate, they pushed St Kilda to gather round. They should have beaten Hawthorn. They were Georgiades kick. He kicks that 9 out of 10 times and he just missed it under the lid. They were really good that night. And they were incredible against Geelong. The way they moved the ball, Harro, I don't know if you watched, it was so fast. Their ball movement. And Butters and Hornfront. Jesus, Hornfront is just so good. I'll tell you what, the umpires are going to hate, having to give Butters 3 votes every week, but they're just going to have to deal with it. Anyway, mate, can Port win this?
Oh, I think they can. I'm not, like, if you had to ask me the likely result of this game 2 weeks ago, I would have said I'll be on Adelaide all day long, but just given the form turnaround by Port, and it really is off the back of Horn Francis elevating himself from being a good player to literally top 5 type player in the comp the last. If he continues that, mate, he's like Dangerfield, but when he was at his best, but with a good kick. Like, he's seriously good. So
how was that dart he kicked? He kicked a 50. He kicked this 50-meter dart into the 50, and it was just sort of around the body, sort of like shouldn't have been able to do it. I can't remember. It went down. I can't remember whose throat it went down. It might have just been to Georgiades, but I was like, he shouldn't be able to be doing that. I saw 4 quarters of him, basically for 3.5 of them, just taking Hawthorn apart under the lid, and he is a genuine star.
Yeah, so that's been good to watch, and yeah. So look, I think I know the Crows have got a lot more in than what we've seen recently, and Port. I don't want to charge into them off 2 weeks form. I would love this to be more like an even money game, and I'd probably, look, no, I can't find a bet based on all of that. Now,
fair enough.
I did actually, when I first came to this game, I thought, right, I think the under total points is probably going to be a good play here. I looked at all of their previous matches, and a lot of these do go quite kind of low. But then the Crows have the last 3 games have all been over 200 points. So that kind of put me off with the line at 177.5. I spoke about the Pies being involved in the highest combined possession games in the comp. Well, Port, they're actually I think the second lowest. So their games are going really low, and they're defending the opposition like backs and whatnot really well. So I'd be happy to have a look at some of those Crows backs that normally go quite high to actually go the other way and go under. And then the other area I like in this game is inside mids and contested players, who play through that midfield, especially more the contested guys, are going really high against the Crows. So, Neil got 32. Did he actually? You think he got more than 32? I've written 32. I think it was 42. Neil got 42 and Ashcroft 36. Flanders 30 and Malira 28. Cripps and Walsh both got 29. Sarong 32. Smith 40. So you look at your Horn Francis, your Butters and your Wines here. It kind of just sets up really well for them from a matchup point of view. And so that's probably where I'll be focusing most of my plays in this one.
Very good. And should be a good watch. I'm really looking forward to that one. I like. The good thing about the Doggies game being half an hour before is you get to see where the Doggies are at and if they've turned up. And if they are freshened up and Bond's carving them up in the quarter, you go, okay, great, I can flick between 2. Or we know Freo's got this in tow and I can just watch the showdown. But I'm looking forward to that one. All right, Saturday, we head into Essendon Brisbane. Well, after a week ago, you would have gone, hey, this could be all right, if Essendon go well on Anzac Day and Brisbane, they haven't looking great. Now it's just how much. $6.70 for the Bombers, $1.11 for Brisbane. The line is currently 41.5 points, Harro. Hard to find many positives apart from just playing at home for Essendon.
Yeah, they were very disappointing, Essendon. It wasn't just sort of they just completely fell apart, actually. But I also saw some really weak efforts in the contest, which was disappointing. You don't really expect to see that, especially on Anzac Day. And, I think Darcy Parish, I don't know what was up with him, but he pulled out of about 3 contests. It was actually, felt sick watching him play. He was horrible. So, if you do that against the Lions, they're the least sort of that I've never. You just don't see Lions players pull out a contest ever.
No, they're hard. They're just hardened. Every line as well. Their small forwards are hard. Everyone from the likes of Bailey and Cameron and Rayner right through to Dunkley and Neil and Andrews down back. There's no one on their list that doesn't have a crack. Yeah. And if you pull that shit against them, they will bury you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting.
It does feel like men against boys, doesn't it, this one? Yeah. And so I noticed one thing, Wally. We talked a lot about the Lions not putting sides away last year. They didn't have a 10-goal victory. And I had a look into that. I wondered why. I think it all comes back to the fact they had a draw against North Melbourne in round 9. And so they felt no need. The percentage became irrelevant to Brisbane last season. And that's not the case now. So I actually think that Brisbane might start putting sides away. I looked at this game last year. I think Brisbane kicked the first 6 goals. They were 6 goals up 20 minutes into the first quarter, and they lost the rest of the game. They literally just played footsie for the last 3 quarters. But with the Lions not having had that draw now, I think that they're more likely to come out and put some smashings on the board. And I think that they're going to do that to Essendon this week, actually. And so I'd be happy to back the Lions to cover the 40-point line. Also, beyond that, Wally, the Lions are allowing the 18th most disposals, so the least in the comp to inside mids, where the Dons are allowing the most in the comp to inside mids. So this could be just a complete midfield domination, and you could look at something like all of the Lions mids to go high with all of the Dons sort of mids to go low, something like that. And so that's where I've come to with this one. Also, when you get these lopsided games, they often go pretty high scoring, Wally. And you look at the total match points in this one, you're looking at a line of, 100, around 180. So I'd be happy to play that because that can win either way you look at it. I quite like that. We just saw that obviously the Bombers game went really high against Collingwood, who are generally involved in really low scoring games. The Brisbane game went over 200 against Adelaide too. So both sides are, at all kind of points in that direction. And the 182, that's set to the bottom of the range where I could have it basically. Yeah. One to look for here is no Oscar Allen. So does Ty Gallup go forward? So you might be able to find a price for him, with a bit of a prediction that he goes forward in this one. But I don't think there's a market for it yet. So we'll wait for that one and assess it as it comes out.
All right, no worries. And I will say this as well, Harry, just to add fuel to what you're saying there around percentage. We're only 7 games in, so don't read too much into this. But there's 6 teams that are on 4 wins with Brisbane. There's 4 teams that are on 1 win less. So that's 10 teams that are 1 win less than what they're on. You've got Sydney that's on 178, Freo that's on 137, and Hawthorn's 124.5%. So they're big percentages. So there's a lot of teams on the same wins. There's some teams up the top that have only lost 1 game, so they've won 2 more games than Brisbane with big percentages. The maths there you go. If they continue, there's 1 spot left in the top 4, and I bet Brisbane will grab a top 4 spot for once rather than having to do it all from the bottom half. Percentage, I think it's a great shout. They're only on 118, so it's by no means bad. It's good, but obviously there is always going to be a handful of teams that are on that mid-teens to into the 20s and higher. So percentage, great shout. Definitely one to look at, Harro. Probably one I hadn't thought of. So that's really good. All right. The Saturday twilight game, well, there's 2 twilight games. First one is West Coast, Richmond. If this was at the G, you'd be going, oh, hang on. But it's not. It's over in the West. West Coast are $1.41. The Tigers are $2.93. The line is 16.5. Yeah. I don't know. Richmond, they'll be fine. They've got this young list and all of that. I don't know. I don't know exactly where they're at, what they're going. I know they got a lot of injuries. The AFL fucking hate them for some reason. I still don't know what that's about. You can tell that. Who's they give us something in a press conference? Show some fucking emotion, some anger. As a coach, you should have just taken the fine and gone, what we saw out there, the umpiring was ridiculous. We've got young kids here that are trying to field something and you stuck it up as again, AFL. But no, fuck, give us something. I want something for them. This is, mate, with Collingwood, the biggest club in the land. There's 100,000 members. They play at the G. They train at Punt Road. Their fans care more about them than anyone. Like, fucking give us something. I'm angry for them.
Yeah. Well, it was good to see the actual media. I saw a clip and that there was someone sent me a clip actually, and they've actually, the media have caught up to this. They're only about 5 years late, maybe, on this sport. This has been happening for 5 or 6 years, and finally we've heard a story.
Have you ever seen a team win 3 flags in 4 years and have the worst free kick differential? And everyone's like, oh, it's the way they played. No. The 08 Hawthorn team were a team that played like, on that edge. And their differential wasn't that bad. Go have a look. Like, we've never seen anything like Richmond. And you have a look at the way they play, it makes no sense. It's never made any sense.
Yeah, well, especially doesn't make sense now that they're a poor team and they're still getting – they got reamed by the umpires on the weekend. It was comical.
The fact that Brendan Gale isn't the CEO of the AFL tells you what the commission think of Richmond. Tell me there is a better administrator in the game than Gale. There isn't. You know that. I know that, Harro. Anyway, I'm going to put my tin foil hat away and we're going to talk about the game.
Yes. So, well, I mean, you mentioned it, didn't you? The Tigers injury list. It reads like, I don't know, like it's. I think there's 15, 16 players on there now, a third of their list. So I pray for them that it doesn't get any worse. They might get a couple back this week. I think Short will be back. He missed a game because his wife was having a baby, so he should come back, which will mean a little bit of a shuffle around, with their back, their distributors in their back line at least. So factor that into your punting, especially, if you're looking to back a guy who had kickouts last week. Well, he might lose them this week with Short coming back. So that's just one little thing to keep an eye on. West Coast, they've definitely lost their way a little bit in the last few weeks. And I did notice one thing listening to their coach, who I really like. They've been doing an extra training session a week compared to all other clubs to try and fast-track their development. And I think they haven't been able to maintain the intensity that they had earlier in the year with their pressure. So I actually wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe freshen up a little bit for this game, being a home game, which they think they can probably win, and come out with a lot more energy and a lot more pressure this time against Richmond. And I'm quite keen on West Coast to get the job done here, Walley, to win, and also at the line. I think there's a bit of a gap between these two, mainly because of the Tigers. Their recent form's it's just a long way below everyone, really, and even their best performance this year. You've got to go back to their very first game. And I've just got doubts about how, with Carlton at the moment, whether the form around them is even worth considering. I think every other game Richmond have played, they haven't got within 40 points, where you look at West Coast, they, when they've actually turned up with some decent pressure, like the margin against Fremantle, who are a really good side, 56 points, but it was actually, they were a lot more competitive than that. And obviously they had the good win against Port. They beat North Melbourne at Optus Stadium. So I think there's a lot more to like in the overall picture, just based on this season, what we're seeing from West Coast. And they don't have the injury list that they're actually relatively healthy compared to Richmond especially. So keen on West Coast, mate. I think that they'll get their job done at home. I noticed Lindsay, he's a first-year player. They put him in the main distributor ball user role on the weekend, and he had 30. He gets the Tigers this week, are a really good matchup for that type of player. He's $5.20 if you think he can repeat the 30, or just back him $1.82 to get 24, hoping that he gets that role again, which I think is a good chance he will. I really like this Milan Murdoch. I don't know if you've noticed him, Wally. He's like a little mini fox terrier. He has a real crack, and he knows how to find the footy. He seems like a smart little player, and I'm happy to follow him, mate. He's to get around that 20. He seems to be doing that fairly consistently, and again, a good matchup as well. One area I've picked up here, West Coast concede the second most goals in the AFL to small forwards. And there's a guy for Richmond who I just really like the way he plays as well, and that's Seth Campbell. And you can get him at $2.50 to kick 2. I'd be happy to play that. But look, I think there's a lot more value out there as well. Like I like some of these midfielders for West Coast, especially Harley Reid, who he's got a lot more of a tank now, and he's finding a lot more of the footy. We know that the Tigers aren't really tagging, that sort of thing. So, I reckon Harley Reid as well to get his 23, 24, wherever the line's set for that one. Also, Wally's a good play. Before I finish, there's just a one that's sort of been playing out for a long time for us now is Richmond, when games where they're expected to be a bit more competitive, they go low scoring. And the line's not low here, Wally. It's 184.5. And, if Richmond can be, a little bit more competitive, which is what we're kind of expecting, playing a side closer to them on the ladder, then competitive Richmond games, they go low. So consider that one as well, punters.
You're talking about West Coast coach earlier. Do you think Richmond fans are a bit flat, the fact that he was coaching their footy club in 2023 and now they could have had him? He was there.
He does seem good.
Didn't even clean out his desk. He was there. He had a car park. He could have just stayed.
I don't think Uze's all that bad, Wally. I don't
think he's that bad. I'm just saying that, like, I'm not saying he's bad. We don't know enough yet. We don't know enough yet. But the bottom line is, has anyone jumped out of their skin and gone, he's great? Whereas I think some people are starting to think McWalter might actually be a pretty good coach. Do you know what? I'm going early on this, though. I think Josh Carr's the real deal. That's a complete side thing, and it's very early. He just feels like he is going to be the real deal. Uze's a watch. McWalter's probably still a watch. There's certain ones you go, I think they will be. I think Josh Carr's the one of all the – and Stephen King, pretty hard to argue with that as well.
Stephen King, I love him.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, that's fair. I reckon – if you're going to rate all the sort of last couple of years, I think Carr and King for me are the two.
I'll tell you what I've got a little watch on. Yep, I'm wondering whether Geelong are going to be missing Stephen King a little bit. Their performances so far is okay, but they've replaced Stephen King with Nathan Buckley basically. And we know Bucks is a fairly negative. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but he's more of a conservative, negative type. He's looking to always close down the opposition. Obviously, really low scoring
coach,
defensive coach,
coach versus an attacking coach, which King is.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. If the Cats might miss King at the end of the day. We'll see.
Speaking of the Cats, they're $1.23 against North Melbourne, who are $4.20, and the line is 28.5. The Cats will be happy to be home this week. They go back down to a ground they obviously love and play very, very well. This North were good again. They were stiff on the weekend and they were great. Like Geelong, these things can happen. It could be a blemish on what's going to be another good season. It could be a worrying sign. I think that it's impossible to tell this early. But we've got to make some sort of decision here because either you like Geelong or you want to stay away or you think $4.20 is a big price for the Roos.
Yeah, well, I think we saw with the Cats when they had a bad one in round 0, which is funny to say, that they bounced straight back, didn't they? And so I'm not inclined to think that I'm inclined to think that the Cats had a bad day and that they're likely to bounce straight back from it. Having said that, North are no pushover, and I'm not going to back the Cats at $1.23, put it that way. So you can have that. Geelong, normally I'll be very keen to back the over total points in a Geelong game, especially at home. But the line is 190.5. There is like a bit of wind forecast and potentially a bit of rain as well. So I'm going to just keep an eye on that one. And, with the line being so high, I'm not really tempted to jump in on the overs. North Melbourne have just become such a better side defensively, not just in terms of what they're conceding on the scoreboard, but just how they're controlling the opposition players as well. And they're not conceding big numbers. They're obviously, they're conceding the least disposals in the comp. And so I look at, there's only 4 players, I think, offered on the unders at this early point in the week, Wally. And it's, but I'd be happy to back, Smith under 32.5 and Tom Stewart under 23.5, based on what they're being offered at right now. And hopefully they offer some more players up for us to consider the unders, given that their opponent is conceding such low disposals this season. That's definitely an area I want to play. The other guy who I just love, this guy, Wally, and you talk about, seeing guys pulling out from a contest. Christian Sherry, he's going to give blokes a reason to pull out from a contest, isn't he?
He's just like a beast, mate.
I love him. Love him.
He's relentless.
The other thing about him,
he gets hit outs, he gets disposals, he makes heaps of tackles, clearances, he gets it all. I think that he can be that All-Australian ruck this year. It's just hard because Gorm won't stop playing just top shelf footy.
Yeah.
But it's only a matter of time until he gets that nod. He's so good.
Cherry reminds me of that really big kid that every team had in junior footy that was like the man-child who everyone was scared of.
Yeah.
He just gets in and just, smashes blokes. So I just love him. He's going to play against a pretty young, inexperienced ruck this week. I think Blixabs is out. So look for Cherry to dominate again like he did against GWS. I'll just have a quick look, see what he's offered at in here.
So honestly, you can play disposals, hit outs if you can get a tackle market.
Yeah,
tackles, fantasy, like whatever it is, like you just pick an angle. I like the Super Coach and AFL fantasy markets because I just think then if they have an overall impact, it's really like that helps. And he does all of that. He literally does it all.
Yeah.
So that's an area. If you can find those markets that are around, I think AFL fantasy I don't do fantasy anymore, but I'm pretty sure AFL fantasy is quite clear cut, like points. Whereas Super Coach, I think you get points for a few different things and efficiency in that. Don't quote me on that. It's not my go anymore. But I'll look into that. I reckon that there's areas and there's multiple bookmakers offer those odds.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's a guy I'm happy to follow. Otherwise, definitely keeping an eye on the weather. And if we just get high winds, that under 190 could be worth a look. So, if we do get a bit of rain as well, that could be really nice. But these are the areas I'm looking to play. I think Geelong are a bit too short, but I'm not looking to oppose them when I don't think that they're. I think they've just had a bad day and they'll come back and it's probably a bad day for North to get them really when they're looking to bounce back at home. So
they very rarely lose two in a row, and especially when the second one's at home.
Yeah,
pretty good. All right. Saturday night's game is Carlton V St Kilda. TDK and Jack Silvani against their old club. Carlton's 274. The Saints offer I know it was only against West Coast, but it was very impressive win. Their first win over 100 points in over a decade, I think it was. All right, St Kilda's $1.46. The line's 14.5, Harro.
Yeah, just seeing some small improvements in Carlton at the moment. I know obviously they fell apart the week before against Collingwood late, and they had all of that, sort of turmoil going on. But they were pretty good, I thought, against Freo, and I listened to their coach, and he's seeing some incremental improvement. They don't have a lot missing at the moment. I think they get Mackay and the ruckman back this week. So I think Carlton getting a 14-point start. I think the value is probably with Carlton just slightly there, but I'm not racing to back it. They're definitely not the most consistent side or the most sort of backable. So that's, I think we all know that. But just wanted to put that out there. I'm probably not – I think the Saints are a little bit too short to be wanting to back $1.46 or the 14.5. I expect it to be reasonably close. Now, Carlton, I said this last week, they really struggle with the Pickett, Bolton types, and we saw Bolton get 32 against them on the weekend. They probably come up against the best of this type of player in Naz this week, and Naz is just consistently getting it done. Look at him. He's 29, 28, 28, 34. He's added tension in all of those games. And yes, Carlton just don't have the type of player that can quell a guy like Naz. And we've seen it already this season with Bolton and with Pickett. So I'm happy to have a play with Naz. Now, this guy I backed on the weekend, I really like the way he goes about it. Ross has actually given him a bit of a license to go and get the footy now rather than being solely focused on, an opposition player, and that's Garcia. He had 32 in a kind of breakout game on the weekend. His line's 23.5, and he's been over that in his last 3 games. So I'd be happy to play there. We know that the Saints, they can give up disposals to backs, and like Nick Newman now, he's had 24 and 22 the last 2 weeks. He's that type of player. So looking to support your Nick Newman type there as well. Carlton, I know also they do give up disposals to wingers, and so I'll be looking at your Saints wingers who they do mix it up a little bit there. But Brad Hill, the form he's in at the moment, you'd be pretty keen to support him basically, and I think that's where I'm at with this game, Mortley. There's that's mainly playing around the disposals. The Saints games, they do go on the high side disposal wise. And it'll be interesting to see if they get King back too, because that could change things around a little bit for them.
Yeah, great
I'm
shout.
not too sure. He might need another game.
There's still non-committal there. There's talk of he may go around in the VFL. He got through it, but there's just no need to rush him.
Yeah,
there's no need. Like he's such an impactful addition to that team. That just This is the Will Day thing again. This is like when you have a player that is so important, just don't rush him. If it was a week out of finals, rush him. If it's round 8, don't rush him. It's not hard. Yeah. So anyway, mate, we move on to Sunday. Just 2 games on Sunday, and as we were saying, look, Sundays, Harro, we don't go into as much detail because it's so far out. There's so much to go with teams. We understand that. Keep an eye on our socials. Any up-to-date information we usually touch on there. All right, Sydney take on Melbourne. Sydney's $1.18. Melbourne's $4.90. Sydney's 31.5-point start. Like the way the D's have been going, it could only be Sydney that have a 31.5-point line against them. The way they're playing, they're 7-0 in the live ladder. They look as good as they have looked in years.
Yeah.
Swannies going well.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't back against the Swans, could you? They're just going so well. And as I said before, they're 7-0 at the line. So, yeah, you'd be a brave or probably silly man to take on the Swannies. I do like the over total points in this one, Wally. Ooh. We've seen the Demons games go, pretty high pretty much all year. And I don't expect that to change here. The Swans are, very attacking. Just looking through like their last sort of, 5-6 games, they've made up at 198, 206, 181, but they had that sort of bad day against Essendon, 197. So, yeah, there's really not much, low scoring at all going on in Melbourne games, and we know that they want to play an attacking brand. And I did hear King say, look, if we're going to beat Sydney, we're going to have to outscore them. We're probably not going to be able to stop them from scoring. And they're the kind of words I like to hear, Wally, when I'm looking to back the overs. So that's going to be...
Sydney have had some... Sydney just as they've had 186, 173, 168, but then like over 200, 171, 181, sorry. So like they've had high-scoring games themselves. And the fact that King is already saying that to us tells us that the over 186.5 is in grave danger of being toppled. So that's great news. What else we got, Harro?
Yeah, well, we also know that the D's, they don't hang on to the footy, So they like to go very direct and move the footy quite fast. And when you play that style, you're basically handing the footy back to the opposition and allowing them to have a lot of it. And so the Swannies, who I think are the highest handball team in the comp at the moment, or them or the Giants, I know the Swannies are playing a very high handball game. I think that we're going to see some big numbers from some Swannies players. And so, pick your targets, but kind of looking at guys like, your outside types like your Matty Roberts. We just saw him have 27 on the weekend. I think he could be, in a really good spot here. We know those high half forwards who go into the midfield a bit can go really well. A guy, obviously, that's in really good form as well for Sydney is McInerney. He's getting plenty of it. I expect that Heaney will come back in. I suspect they've just given him a bit of a rest. You got to keep your Ferrari, with service, don't you, Wally? So you don't want to burn that one out. I think that's all that was. So I think Sydney will have over 400 disposals here. So, and I think that there's going to be some good areas from a disposals point of view for Sydney.
Yep, love that. Mate, the last game of the weekend as we head into it's a Sunday night game. It's the Expansion Cup because I believe Brisbane's got a public holiday on the Monday. So we get Sunday night footy, which I do like, 7:20 on Sunday night. Beats reality TV. Sport's the best reality television there is, Harro. $1.38 for the Suns. The Giants are $3.08. The line's 18.5. Geez, that's a big line it's a big start for a team that have been pretty shit, really, the last few weeks, Harro. And GWS seem to be getting it together. And if you think North Melbourne are going well, the GWS win was a good one. I don't know. I'm not saying they win, but 3-goal start.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'd love to know what's going on with Gold Coast because they're not playing to their potential at the moment. And they looked really good, didn't they, in the first couple of rounds? But since then, they haven't. And, I think they're trying to get their midfield mix right. I noticed in the Hawthorn game, it looked like they just had too many blokes going for the ball, and they're all ball getters and ball winners. And where Hawthorn, obviously very well coached, they only ever had one bloke going for the ball and the rest of them were hanging out on the outside, either stopping Gold Coast getting out if they won it or, if a Hawthorn bloke won it, well, they were well set up to spread from that point of view. And, so it'd be interesting to see if Gold Coast can work that out. But they're a little bit unbackable at the moment, but they're also very hard to oppose at home, Wally. So I'm going to probably give a little pass in terms of the line on that one. Now, just looking at some players, mate, I noticed that Noah, one of our favourites, Noah Anderson, he didn't look quite right, did he, in the first part of the season? Had that little appendicitis issue sorted out, came back, had his 30-odd against Hawthorn and looked like the Noah Anderson I think we're expecting to see. And we know how much of a good ball winner he is when he's sort of up and going. The other area that I like here is we've seen Finn Callahan get a lot of attention from the opposition in recent weeks. Now, that's not going to be the case this week. Gold Coast will back themselves in. And so I'm happy to back his disposals as well, mate. And apart from that, I think it's actually a night game, isn't it? This one?
Yeah, it's like 7:20.
Yeah.
Because they've got a public holiday on the Monday up in Brisbane.
Right. So, look, being a night game up in Queensland, with the 186.5, I do feel like there's potentially a little opportunity to play the under because we know night games in the southeast of Queensland, they can get a bit dewy and the conditions can be a little bit difficult for scoring. And just with the line being set, to that sort of height, I'd be happy to play the under there, Wally, as well.
Very good. All right, Harro, that's a great wrap, mate. Before we go, we're going to need the best bet of the round.
Mate, I'm going to back myself in with the idea that Brisbane aren't mucking around anymore as they were last year. And I think for them to get the job done by the 40+ against the Dons, mate. Sorry.
Very good, mate. All right, Harry, been great as always. Enjoy the weekend's footy and we'll see you next week.
Hooroo.
Imagine what you can be buying instead. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.